All right, let's get into the panel. Join me now for the latest. Labor MP, former Labor MP, putting him back in Parliament, aren't I? Michael Danby, and Sky News contributor Kosha Garda. We'll start with a housing issue. China-Australia property expert Daniel Ho believes Australia's future is Asian after new figures reveal that Chinese buyers have been approved to splash some $3.4 billion on Australian residential real estate in the past financial year. That's up $1 billion from the last year. Most of the buyers say Ho have been purchasing for their planned use to have the properties in Australia and become Australian citizens. I'm going to ask you, Kosha, to give a sense of how we differ from the rest of the world. But Michael, I thought there was a brouhaha about this about a decade ago. I thought we had constraints on how much of our Australian homes, not land for development, but residential homes, could be sold to offshore buyers.
Well, it's a bit determinist, this attitude. Tomorrow belongs to me. I mean, please, maybe he's picked up the zeitgeist that China's on the winning all around the world. Julie Bishop's jogging on the Great Wall of China last night, and the Maldives, East Timor and the Solomons seem to have fallen under the Chinese maw. I mean, we need to tighten this up in Australia. If the tax on overseas property investors isn't enough, then we need to do more. We can't buy property in China.
Well, this is the point, Kosha. I can't go and buy a house in Beijing, so why should Beijing buy a house in Sydney?
Reciprocity is an obvious one, and China is notoriously very, very tight around these laws. So is the Middle East, notoriously very difficult to buy it, and a lot of Eastern European countries, Hungary, Poland, Austria, and interestingly, Canada, which is similar in many ways or analogous to us. They've had so much pressure recently that they just passed a new bill at the start of this year, making it more restrictive. So I think that there's a tectonic plate shift happening around just public sentiment around this issue, and I think it also expands beyond the economics of what that does and increases property prices. And it's also just philosophically about, should foreigners be allowed to own land and property?
Particularly when we
cut out.
You're right, and particularly when we've got this crisis issue in Australia about stock availability and everything else. Hey, I thought of you when Suella Braverman gave that speech in the States last week. I mean, it was a blitzkrieg sort of speech. It was all the things that politicians, Michael, say behind closed doors in relation to concerns about the pace of immigration. She was very outspoken. And of course, it comes at a time when it's not just the UK. You've got big issues in Europe. You've got all these issues now across that southern border in the United States. And Australia, unless the government does what they think they're going to do or talk about doing and dismantle Home Affairs, we have so far been immune.
Well, first to declare an interest, I'm with Mike Pizzullo. I think he's worth 10 of most of the people in Cabinet. But that aside...
He's the stood-down Home Affairs Secretary.
He's the hard man who kept Australia's policy as it is. And that has avoided us having the problem that they have had in Lampedusa and Mexico. We had a huge fight in the Labor Party about this, and Australia is so fortunate that we theoretically at least have a bipartisan policy of determining how refugees come to this country. I think you can increase refugee quotas and be generous and nice and humane, but you can't just let people flood in because you lose your sovereignty.
And she made the point too, which again, a lot of people talk about the too many migrants too quickly, but she went into what is not necessarily always safe territory, and she said it's all good and well for people to come, but they have to integrate. Now, she's not saying assimilate, she's not saying lose their culture forever, but she is saying if you come to Britain, you have to become British.
And that's where I think the quantum of immigration matters, because even if people are, for the large part, they're good people, they maybe are coming because they want a different way of life. Ultimately, if 16% of the fabric of a nation, of the population, is foreign-born, which is where we are in a lot of these countries, it's human nature that you're going to fall back into your comfort zone and stay within the critical mass of folks that you are, and you are going to delay assimilation. That has all sorts of second and third order effects that we see every day.